Introducing the E-Wrap Reverse Selvage, known as Scallop or Vandyke, in a 1x3 configuration taken from the Vintage Auto Knitter manual. A selvage is simply a recipe that locks in the live stitches, so later when you take off the scrap yarn, it doesn't undo them. The secret to this selvage is how you start with the cylinder needles in the machine. With my ribber that will be used, the easiest way to align my ribber is the first empty slot after 3 o'clock. So for me, that first slot after 3 will be reserved for my ribber. So that first slot is empty, and after that, 3 cylinder needles, an empty slot, and repeated all the way around the machine. Then cast on with whatever method you prefer and work 10 to 15 rows. Just for clarity, we will always tell you when to add or remove your heel spring. All right, so we finished with the scrap yarn. We want to add some Ravel cord. It makes separating your scrap and your project yarn easier later. So to do so, and whenever I start anything, I add with a clip, just holding the tail. You could just hold it with your finger. And I laid it here, starting at the first cylinder needle after 3 o'clock. Clip it to secure it, just because it is easier to manage the tension of it. This is a 3.5-inch hemostat, one of my favorite clips. You can get them on eBay or Amazon. I'm just showing that this is the first cylinder needle of my setup here. We're going to work from 3 o'clock until 7 o'clock and then stop to do the next step. We're going to raise the back half of the needles from 3 o'clock as far over to the left as we can go. We're setting up for the E-Wrap. With the Ravel cord still on and the row not completely finished, we will continue to 12 o'clock. We're done with the Ravel cord. So we are going to take that out and now finish raising the rest of the cylinder needles. What I'm showing you here is a crescent tool. It's a half moon that allows easy use of lifting needles. I also show you can do so with your stitch tool. You don't need it. It's just helpful. Now with all needles raised, we'll stop the yarn carrier at 7 o'clock. This is what it looks like right now from the inside. Now what we want to do is we want to add our project sock yarn. I clip mine with a bit of a tail on a bit of a ways away, so you have more to work with. I'm showing you what's happening here. You're going to take your project sock yarn and you want to do an E-Wrap. Now most CSMs, when they knit to the right or counterclockwise. So we want to work around the machine in a counterclockwise direction. So we are here E-Wrapping. When you put an E-Wrap on a needle, you will approach the first needle on the left side, go to the outside of the machine, and then come to the right, and then just form kind of like an E. And you want to do that for every single cylinder needle all the way around, not overlapping the very first one wrapped. We will stop at the last needle just before 3 o'clock. And as a note, I've read online that it doesn't matter if you work around your cylinder from the left side going clockwise or counterclockwise. My preference is to work in the direction your machine knits. Most TSMs knit forward going counterclockwise. Okay, with that last cylinder needle wrapped, we're going to just move the yarn carrier to about 6 o'clock. Now bring the yarn path to the outside of the machine, not making anything loose, and bring it over to your yarn carrier. Currently, all the needles are up, so before we do anything, the next step with the yarn carrier where it is to gently lower the needles from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock to about 9 o'clock on the machine. When you lower them, don't press them down all the way because the latches will pop closed. Lower them down enough that they're low enough to knit while the latches remain open. And be prepared to have quite a lot of tension as you knit this area, holding the area down to help it ensure to knit correctly as you work over these needles that'll have 2 stitches on each needle and a bit of a tightness from the E-wrap. Now we're going to advise you to apply your heel spring. It makes this first selvage knitted row much firmer and tighter and really quite pretty. Okay, so here we are pressing down these needles, not pressing them all the way so the latches close. You'll get a feel for it. There's a bit of tension on them. Work your way over from 3 o'clock till over about 9 o'clock. That area shouldn't have any cam interactions, so you've got full access. If you can go a bit further, that's perfectly fine. Looks like I could here. All right, and I'm just checking to make sure the latches are open. There's going to be quite a bit of tension. With the heel spring on, the slack of your yarn path will be taken care of. And I'm just showing you where we're going to go to. We're going to use the yarn carrier over to about 9 o'clock. Go slow. This first row of these double stitches on each cylinder needle are going to be quite a lot of tension. The knitting prior, the Ravel cord and all those things here are going to want to rise a bit, and it's going to be quite firm. This is the most challenging area right here, this initial row. So you're working over till the left there. So the next step then is to lower the remaining area of needles. So all the needles now should be all the way down. They're ready to knit. All latches looks like this. All the latches are open. It's quite tight. Now here's the secret. We are going to stop for a moment and we are going to take off our yarn start tail. By working this area in to the right to the cylinder needles prior to 3 o'clock, if you wrap your yarn tail around, I'm going to wrap it around each of the 3 needles on this side of 3 o'clock, then you won't have to work it in when you take the sock off the machine. You won't need to thread it in using a darning needle. So what you do here by doing this work in is when it's off the machine, you just cut the yarn tail where you see it and it's already taken care of. It shouldn't undo. So that's all you do there. I like to reclip the tail so it maintains tension on the inside of the cylinder here. That way I don't have to worry about it rising up and getting out of order when I work this final area of the very first row of stitches. All right, so this is what it'll look like off the machine, and just snip it there, you're good. All right, so now take the yarn carrier from where it is, finish this last bit of the very first row. Remember, lots of tension on the double stitches on all of these needles. So work your way over, make sure everything gets worked in. I'm passing the 3 o'clock position and those needles on this side of 3 o'clock, which have technically 3 stitches on each needle, but we've managed it. It looks great. So we're going to continue. I'm just going to show you a quick trick here at 3 o'clock. This is the area just after 3 o'clock. This is, of course, the yarn tail is here, and we have the 2 passes we pass. See, there's 3 strands. We want 3 strands. If you don't have 3 strands there, and you're going to have 3 strands in each empty slot, then you haven't done enough rows. But if you followed along, you should be there. Now move the yarn carrier till about the 7 o'clock position. We're ready for the ribber. Okay, so we've added the ribber assembly to the machine here. I'm showing you what a ribber needle looks like that with an open latch, always used open latched. The tappet is firmly against the arm. The ribber fin on the inside is firmly against the inside of the cylinder piece. The ribber stop. I'm showing you the very first slot that aligns to the very first empty slot on my cylinder. It's the 2 green marks that you see there that I'm pointing to with my stitch tool. We are going to start with this very first empty slot on the cylinder. We are going to use our stitch tool to pull out the needle, or maybe use what's better to use is to use your ribber needle to kind of advance the stitches there and just look at what's in underneath. I'm showing you the 3 bars we showed before, and there they are. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold these 3 bars, take our ribber needle, now that we firmly have those 3 bars, and we are going to load an open ribber needle in such a way that those 3 bars are going to be in the needle, not behind the latch. It's very important whenever you're using ribber needles that any stitch added to them do not sit behind the latch because it'll drop the stitch. It has to sit in the needle. So none of these bars are divided. Everything is caught completely. Now this is done. This is our first added ribber needle. It'll rib correct when we work it because it's added correctly. Now you'll be doing this same technique on every single empty cylinder slot. And you're going to do it all the way around. Use what works for you. I find using the ribber needle to pull on the cylinder needle to bring out the stitch, and then use your stitch tool to manage the bars, and then swap it, hold the bars, and put the needle in to work. It seems to work. A lot easier on your fingers than pulling on a metal needle all by yourself. So as you work around the cylinder, advance the yarn carrier, continue around. Note when your yarn carrier starts passing the 3 o'clock position, you might want to add some additional pull down pressure because there's a lot more tension on this initial row with each ribber needle holding 3 bars of stitches, okay? If you're curious, I'm about to show you an example of the selvage in relation to the ribber dial. The red arrows pointing to the ribber dial are showing where the ribber needles are, and on this knitted selvage top, those arrows there, that are the columns, are ribber stitches. So this is how the picot's formed. The ribber picked up needles having the 3 bars are what form the picot, otherwise known as maybe knit 3 together in this example. And that's what causes this beautiful selvage, along with the E-wrap. All right, so we've worked that last complete row. At this point, the next step is to take your heel spring off and do whatever section of the sock you want to do next, because you're done. Thank you. Bye.